Welcome to Pet Sitter Confessional. Today we're brought to you by Timed Pet and Pet Perennials. Today we are super excited to have Garrett Stevens back on the show. He was previously with us on episode 254, so it's been a hot minute, and we wanted to dive into some more topics. But Garrett, super excited to have you back on the show today talking about cues from dogs, more about body language and things we need to be watching out for. But for those who aren't familiar with you or your work or haven't listened to that episode yet, can you please tell us a little bit more about who you are and all that you do?
Yes, thank you, Colin, for that kind intro, and thanks for having me back on. You guys do great work. My wife, Amalia, and I own Stevens Family Kennels and Dog Language Center in Puyallup, Washington. And I've also been a professional dog trainer actually this summer, fall, going on 20 years now. So wow. And that's been a fun journey most times.
Oh, I bet. And in 20 years in the dog training world, I'm sure there's been a lot of things that have changed as well.
Yes, yeah. And for me personally, when I was in the beginning, phases or the first few years, it was very much based on, what I call typical training or mainstream training, where here's a sit, here's a down, here's the work and the obedience. And I did Schutzhund and all this kind of stuff. And my first dogs were boxers, and they did amazing tricks and carried in the groceries and jumped through literal hoops and all that kind of stuff, which was fun and good. But then I started to get a little bit away from that, which was a better fit for me when I started going much more into the deeper behavioral problems and issues, and finding that sometimes the tricks and even the work that most people think the dogs need for modern families and house dogs, they might not need as much of that work as they do relaxation and calmness and fitting in and adaptation and dog language kind of skills, and with other dogs and with people.
Mm. Yeah, it's a reminder that just because your dog can sit doesn't mean it's trained. Right, because we're talking.
Yeah,
kind of sounds like what you're talking about here is there's a much broader world here, a much more holistic approach that we're trying to understand.
Yeah, especially because, when we just think of normal people, not a dog crazy like me, when they think of training, and even a lot of people I think in the pet industry think of training, they instantly imagine whatever, the German Shepherd doing this rigid kind of obedience. But if we look at most families, they have house dogs, and the requirements there are different from, say, the canine handler on active duty going to Ukraine or Iraq. And they need rigid obedience right away. But even though we want our house dogs to obey, and they do, we want them to be family members and to hang out and to be really much more relaxed. And I think a lot of people don't realize how relaxed and wonderful some dogs can be, especially if they get a working breed. They think like they automatically are almost pigeonholed towards going that way.
Mm. And then they start going down the road of, okay, well, now how do I make this dog fit my life, or how do I make my life fit this dog? And sometimes that means they started off on the wrong track, on the wrong foot.
Yes.
A better understanding of what actually is possible with this.
Right, because even if you look at any canine, wild or domestic, the parents and the uncles and aunts that are hanging around the pack, the group, they have very much some requirements on proper energy, so that fights don't break out, proper energy, so that the young are up and coming, they grow super fast, and they have to be prepared for life, especially in the wild, of course. But domestication is kind of a catch-22 for a lot of our dogs, and a lot of the owners, because they get food, shelter, water 24/7. So they can grow up quick, just like all canines do, but they can remain foolish with their energy distribution. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I know. I've had those interactions with dogs where the only way I can describe that is where you kind of get that feeling of, oh, this is kind of intense right now, or like this dog is kind of like the energy levels on this dog aren't appropriate for this situation.
That's right. That's right. And even if we're talking just a hyper young, friendly pup that's mauling almost grandma at the front door at Thanksgiving, or you're talking about a serious behavioral issue where the dog is putting bites on people or bites on other dogs because it's out of control. It's always a matter going back to the heart of the energy and the dog language, in my opinion.
Well, so I know a very practical component of this is as dog walkers, as pet sitters, people who who do boarding, that kind of thing. A lot of us require a meet and greet, a new client meeting, and a lot of us are starting to use some more language along the lines of, "Oh, we're doing a behavioral assessment, or we're doing a consultation
Yes.
to make sure that this dog is a good fit." What are some things that maybe we should be looking for during that initial assessment, or things that you see that go missed and shouldn't be?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And we do that too at Stevens Family Kennels. We have an overnight 24-hour boarding requirement before, say, because we'll get the call. Hey, my German Shepherd's never boarded anywhere. He's a bit reactive, and we got a 3-week trip coming up in 2 days. We're like, well, and believe it or not, sometimes we take those, of course, because we do work with some very powerful and very interesting case by cases,
Mm.
But to get back to what you're saying, yeah, we definitely want to look for the dog language, and one of the main issues I always see, and in my upcoming third book here, it's about what I call the 4 pillars of dog language. There's 2 different chapters in this book based on touch, because touch is one of the what I call the first pillar of dog language, because they're born like little Helen Kellers, right?
Mm.
They're born blind and deaf. So how important is touch? And then touch is also the first of the 5 senses. And often we might, as professionals, we'll look at dogs and we'll read industry things on the olfactory system of the dog. We know they're amazing sniffers and smellers and tasters with the gustatory system, the mouth, and the smelling of the nose. And but we sometimes are missing some of the subtle manipulations of the dog touch. And that can be a very friendly but hyper guy. And for some people, it's a case by case basis for the human and what we are doing as professionals. We might think that this hyper young dog is okay, but it might be going too far. And then we have to consider the age of the animal too at the time, because whatever is underlying behaviorally comes out stronger at sexual maturity for a lot of dogs, which is around 1.5 to 2 years.
Mm.
So if there is whether the dog is being friendly but constantly pushing into your space, for example, the nervous dog is always might try to push in and lick you and hide its butt in your feet or near your legs. These are things we can. The good news is these are things we can adjust by simply going hands-on in the right way. And that I think is that I know is lacking in the training industry because of diverting to a treat or something where we don't actually physically handle the dogs in a smooth and loving and sometimes firm, but sometimes gentle, but sometimes, there's the whole gamut of wonderful things that like you see with a mother dog and her pups.
Mm.
So I don't know, I'm going off kind of, but to reel it back in. Yeah. So if a dog's jumping on me, some of the mainstream advice is, turn your back because you're not acknowledging it. And while that might be true for 3 months and under, there are plenty of dogs on the planet that will, if you just turn your back on them, they'll increase it over the months to jumping more and even possibly humping, and then who knows, nipping your arms and whatever else. Like they can take it to the next steps. We have to kind of, as professionals, be aware of where the trajectory is going through touch and space, which is space is what I call the second pillar. So the 4 pillars of dog language: touch, space, movement, and energy. And if we think more about that, I think we're going to get a much more in-depth view right away, in-depth analysis right away on what the dog is like and what the dog is doing.
Yeah, especially in that context of, you said touch, space, movement, and energy, walking into a room, and I get, that's on us to go, okay, I've entered a room. How
Yep.
is this dog immediately reacting to me? Right? What are they moving closer? Are they moving further away? How quickly are they doing both of those things? So maybe walk through some of the relationships between these, or are these kind of just distinct as you have them pillars, or is there connections between them?
Yeah, well, I call them pillars because if I say, well, I'll use two examples. Say we got the hyper young pup that's friendly and just coming bombastically into my space, jumping all over my legs and licking and mouthing and nipping, like, which is all normal. Um, I will still kind of try to keep a barrier in the beginning of 8-9 inches from my legs, so that this dog, and that means that requires me to bend over and kind of not push it, but handle the dog so it backs up a little. Now, if you do push a dog, of course, or a pup, they're going to spring right back. So I like to step forward into the space, which is what you'll see if you watch videos of any more calm but assertive and relaxed parent dog. They will take the pup's space. But again, there's a pillar. But to get to energy, which we want the dog to calm down again, we might guide or influence touch, then take the space. Then as the dog calms and slows its movement, another pillar, then we see proper energy starting to occur. So then we give back that instant spatial freedom again. And it's freedom to fail for the young puppy. The puppy's going to fail forward like they often do. And like I did when I was a young pup myself, right? We're going to make mistakes. And it's okay to make mistakes, but we want to fail forward and get the understanding of that proper space and say, listen, when you're around me, pup, you can't be throwing this level of energy at me. So to control the energy, I have to slow the movement a little bit. I have to take the space if necessary. And then I can touch the dog smoothly. The dog relaxes some, and then I give back the space, and the movement can go back, but not at the same level. Just like when you see the referee call a foul in basketball, the guy maybe elbowed down in the paint. He elbowed the guy, he bumped the guy. You can go back to bumping a little, but you can't elbow. So we took it down a notch energy-wise.
Kind of showing that dog what the expectations are for this kind of interaction, and
Exactly.
the touch of, is it a nice, smooth, gentle, calm touch, or are we going crazy, around their head and ears and getting them, basically giving lots of touch, lots of stimulation, and what I'm hearing from that, Garrett, is that's kind of giving that dog permission to give that back to us in return.
That's right, and I don't know if a lot of people know that dogs may look. I think of it like in a humorous way. At the end of the day, if they're looking at the canine scoreboard, they might say, "Listen, you called me 3 times. I came one of them, and then maybe you didn't know it, but I kind of bounced into your space and out touched you like 50 times during this whole day, and therefore." At the end of the day, I'm kind of a bit more in charge. They can take this view. And again, not to make it only about hierarchy or any of this kind of stuff, but they do test. Of course, we know they'll try. They're brilliant social creatures, and they do. Just like my own children, I have 4. I love them. They love me. I might want them to go to bed at a certain time, especially when the younger they are, right? And we kind of set bedtime, and they want to try to manipulate control of bedtime. It's the same thing in the world of touch, space, and movement with a dog. So it's very interesting.
Well, we hear that a lot from pet owners, right? What do they say? Say, "Oh, my dog doesn't act like this around my spouse or my significant other," or "Man, my mom, the dog knows not to do that with them," because they are smart enough to learn this person allows that, this person doesn't, this person's okay. And the only way they know that is if they test people, right? Especially in those initial meetings. And we can get frustrated sometimes if we go, "Oh my gosh, this dog is just going crazy." But if we understand that, okay, no, I have to show where the limits are here and actually have an interaction with this dog of what is appropriate, that's part of that conversation.
Exactly. And that's what we tell all our clients is saying you have to be the referee of energy. So in the referee, here's the cool thing though. This is very encouraging, because in a lot of training, the idea is that you have to be the coach. And the coach we'll go back to basketball example for humans. The coach, "Hey, come on, set the pick, get down there. You got to," and he's very concerned and energized about his 5 players on the court. But with the referee, he's smooth. He's just trotting up and down. He's waiting. Say, okay, there's a boundary. You stepped out of bounds. Let me blow the whistle. Everything stops for 2 seconds. All right, ball back in. Play resumes. Freedom resumes. So, but yeah, setting the tone relationally is hugely important. And sometimes it's funny because over the years, of course, sometimes if I just take the leash, the dog just acts totally different. I didn't do anything. But just they know and they sense. They're very sensitive, of course, with those super senses, I like to call them. And oftentimes we overlook those too with dogs because no other animal is it's like the most familiar animal with humanity. So sometimes we'll say, oh, well, I watched a program on sharks and look, amazing sensitivity. If you turn the shark upside down, it goes into what's called a tonic state. And this is incredible because they have such super senses. I say, yeah, we all do. Every, even the humans, we all have our gifts and our superpower too, right? So finding those and using those. But the dog, the familiarity can breed rudeness. And that's where we have to call out those boundary lines.
Have you heard of Time to Pet? Susan the Pet Gal has this to say.
Time to Pet has helped us grow exponentially. We believe the platform's features make us by far more professional than other companies who use conventional dashboards. They are the software gurus constantly developing and improving the platform based on user feedback. This decision was a good one.
If you're looking for new pet sitting software, give Time to Pet a try. Listeners of our show will save 50% off your first 3 months by visiting timetopet.com/confessional. I'd like for you to talk a little bit more about the release aspect of this, because I think a lot of times we focus on the either, the correction or the implementation of a different energy. But you've mentioned a few times now of the importance of then giving that space back or giving that energy back. Why is that aspect so critical to this process?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's awesome. And I think that's a fine art that has to be developed in us as people, because mom dog has it instinctually in most cases. There's always exceptions, right? You can talk to someone and the breeder would say, oh, this mom abandoned the puppies, right? That's terrible instinct. That's not. But for the most times I try to uplift the parent dogs, but the art of fading away. And some philosophies of training will say, oh, we never correct. We just reward what's good. And that's a fine philosophy. However, in my opinion, you can see dogs correcting one another, right? So for me, it became a how to calm the situation. And I think in dog language, if we were actually speaking dog language, the word correct is almost interchangeable with the word claim or calm. So the mom dog, the uncle, the aunt, my example dogs might calm a dog by taking the space real quick. And I have it on video and stuff, they will start to turn their face away calmly and when they get the result. So first you have to identify what result you're looking for, which is lesser energy and smoother movement. It doesn't have to be frozen. That's another, I think, interesting thing with a lot of training is they can inadvertently, accidentally train frozen explosion syndrome. Where one example for that, real quick, just to go off, is you got your young puppy. You want to train it well and raise it right and take good care of it. So you teach it to wait before the food, or stay before the food, right? You put the food down. Now, some dogs are very hungry and you might be accidentally pumping up their energy while they're frozen there. And in the dog's mind, they're saying, 1 Mississippi, oh, I'm doing this today, but I can't wait to devour that food. 2 Mississippi, you're pumping me up more. I'm going up higher. 3 Mississippi. And the result of this over time can actually lend itself to more resource guarding. And that's something interesting to me because they don't know. They think they're doing solid training, but they might be adding too much energy, the frozen explosion syndrome, which will grow resource guarding. This is just one example of kind of discovering this stuff over the years. But the art of fading, to get back to it. So when my dogs or myself in a training session or in our kennel, when we're boarding dogs, even when we're boarding dogs, we're kind of famous for having it very quiet. I have lots of videos showing 20-something, 30-something dogs in attendance, and they're not barking. When I walk in with a loose dog in the kennel's 4,000 square feet. So this is kind of rare, right? And people say, once in a while we'll get these comments. That's amazing. I used to work in the industry. Why are they all quiet? And I said, well, because we don't like a lot of barking. but we go up. I go up to the fencing, right? Because they're in their 6-foot enclosure, and then they have 20 feet outdoors, whatever. But I'll go up and just kind of look a little unpleasant, but I just kind of put this energy out, and I use my center line, the line running down the center of my body, and I kind of go towards it. Hey, hey, knock it off. Slow down. And for most dogs, believe it or not, if you have that wonderful intention, and you can be very serious, firm but fair, I like to say. And then as soon as they do it, this is the key you're talking about, as soon as they lower a little bit, or they quiet a little bit, or they start to respond a little bit, you cannot be a tyrant and sit there. You have to then soften the face, soften the arms, soften the hands, soften the body language, and start to turn away. A lot of this communication is based in proper physics and geometry. So the fading, though, is wonderful because it relates to real freedom within the relationship. And I like to say this when people ask me about training or behavior. I tell them, I don't have to tell my dogs to sit or down or stay or come or any of that stuff, because they're just free with me. They know. And they don't have to be in, like, a lot of trainers, you'll see them put their shepherd, for example, because there's lots of German shepherds out there, Belgian shepherd, whatever. It's very popular. They'll put them on some downstay or some Platz, it's German for place, and it's rigid. And again, that's fine, I think, if you're doing tricks or if you're doing some canine handling. But for most house dog owners, imagine if they just knew what to do. And like a human, like another human in your house, and you didn't have to. Like when someone comes to visit us, I don't have to usually tell my kids exactly where to go and how to stay and you be frozen on that couch or anything like this. But people do it with their dog all the time, and they think it's very proper. And I'm not saying it can't be, but you have to consider, what would the natural way be? For me, it would be the dog sniffs them. They bark a couple times, of course, before they come in. Let people know if there's a bad guy, hey, there's dogs here, whatever. But they sniff them. We open. I take the space a little bit, backing the dogs up. Then grandma comes in. We'll use her again for Thanksgiving or whatever. She's coming in. They sniff, little pat for 2 seconds, and it's over. It's over. It's literally that small and that smooth. And that's, I think, what a lot of people are looking for, but may not have.
Right. Well, because that traditional of we're going to sit and wait and stay, sure, that explosion may be proper if we are trying to, take down an attacker at any instant, at any second.
Yes.
And we just have to be ready for action at all times. But if we're trying to live in a more cohesive, kind of more organic environment in that family setting where we don't need that's not required there. I love how you said too, Garrett, of like, they know humanity so well. They know humans. They've been with us for a moment or two, right? They understand our body language. And that is part of that communication of, I know if I'm at a dinner table and my dad raises an eyebrow and he makes a certain face, I know we're about to be in trouble, right? We need to go, okay, we're going to move on. And then he lowers and he changes his facial expressions to show, okay, we're on the right track here. We all know that. We didn't have to get, that wasn't a rigid tool set that we have to go through, but it's that showing of, okay, if I'm going to change my energy level to show what I want here, in order for them to know when they've done the right action, I have to back off. Because if I just keep ramping it up and maintaining that, they're not going to know what to do.
That's right. And same thing, they won't know what to do if you don't address it, right? So you need both. It's always this wonderful balance in nature, right? And that's kind of what I think of the 4 pillars of touch, space, movement, energy, because it's primal, it's instinctual, it's natural. And for me, if I think of those things, it's like a very, very efficient way to get to what we want and what the dog wants. Because the dog, of course, just like us, we want some rules and boundaries. If you don't have it, you have chaos. Now, if you overdo the rules, you might get rebellion. Right. So those are like kind of the two things. Chaos or rebellion are the results of if it's not balanced properly and if it's not done smoothly like the dogs do.
Well, it also gives them a chance to actually do the thing that you're wanting, allows them to start operating on maybe a more independent level. So it does act as
Yes.
more organic with one another, so that they're not having to always look at you to say, is this okay? Is this okay? Is this okay? Is this okay? Right?
Yes, that's exactly it. And for most training, everyone is taught that we have to teach them to watch us. But we tell our clients, listen, they're furry Sherlock Holmes. They are observing everything at lightning quick speed. They know what's happening. So instead of that, what does the mom dog do, or the older smooth example dog? They actually turn their head away and walk away. And that might prick a little instinct in a good way, so the pups start following, right? So instead of me having to get all hyper and be like, hey, come here, heel, or foos, or whatever. Not that we don't do it. Sometimes we do. Of course, obedience is good, but it's secondary to the stuff I'm kind of talking about, this primal behavioral language skills. The mom dog turns away, takes away eye contact. And that also says, calm down. It says, follow me. It says everything's fine because I'm not giving you a lot of attention right now. So it means relaxation. And I love that. That's what we kind of talk to our clients a lot about, relaxation for both parties, because that's what the pack wants in nature.
Well, you mentioned it a couple times here too, of, we, again, with the typical idea of training and what that is and what we're looking for, we typically think of the sit, stay commands. We'd say verbal things that we're talking about, but you also are talking about a lot of this nonverbal cues. So you mentioned, turning your head away, averting your eyes. What are other things, other ways that we may be unintentionally communicating with dogs?
Yeah, very, very good. Well, one, like we just mentioned a little bit, is the eye contact. And of course, we love dogs. We love the look of dogs. We love the look of our personal dogs. That's one reason we get them. But I can almost, if we were betting, right, I'm sure I'd win the bet. If we took video, this would be an interesting study on how often the mom is looking at the pups versus how often we look at our dogs. and I'm sure the human far, far, far exceeds the look, because we also appreciate possibly more, I don't know, I'm not a dog, more of the aesthetic beauty. But in nature, I think they appreciate more the living in the moment and the energy, the beauty of energy, and the beauty of these movements and things like this. But anyway, I think we look too much at dogs. And this is a huge problem if you have a nervous dog or an anxious dog or an aggressive dog or reactive dog or any kind of dog that, or even just a new puppy. The puppy could say, hey, you guys are looking at me constantly. Maybe I'm in charge. Am I in charge? I don't know. I guess I'm in charge. So it's very interesting that the mom and dad dog, the uncles, the aunts, the smooth, balanced dogs, you can say, whatever you want to label it, they are choosy about their eye contact. That's one right away. That's a big one.
I mean, you can definitely get some responses that you don't want, right, too, from that eye contact.
Oh, yes.
And sometimes we may be going, well, I'm really looking at something about this dog. I've done this in meet and greets too, where it's like, well, what is this thing? What's the dog moving? And I'm really watching it intently. Unknowingly, this dog is getting more and more nervous. It's getting more and more anxious. It's starting to, kind of panic while I'm staring, just because I'm watching its language. Wow, it's getting really nervous because I'm staring at it, right? And if I just looked away for a minute, it could de-escalate that situation.
And that's the key. We teach our clients there's a 3-second rule. It has nothing to do with dropping your sandwich on the floor, right? But it's a 3-second rule based on we also teach them staring is swearing in dog language. So if a dog is looking for more than 3 seconds, it doesn't mean it's going to turn into Cujo or anything, but it does mean the most skilled linguists among dogs will blink or turn their head or lower the head to sniff and move in to sniff, or turn sideways, or just walk away, or go pee on something, or whatever it's going to be. They won't keep a direct line more than 3-4 seconds usually, unless they are now there's exceptions, right? With on leash, and you're walking down the long road or the straight sidewalk and someone else is coming, they're going to try to keep that line. But that's where, if you want to disperse the energy, which you usually should, to help them be, because we're the referees of energy. We want to interrupt that line a little with a zigzag or a slight turn or a light pat on the head near the eyeballs or all sorts of wonderful things to smoothly interrupt. But yeah, if you're going into a house to evaluate, even just you look at the dog for 1-2 seconds, you glance away back at the owner, you look back at the dog, and you angle your body at a 45 instead of a 0 point where it's direct. One question I always ask clients too is, does energy leap up when you're watching the weigh-ins and the face-off at the UFC or with boxers? Does energy leap up when those guys get in their face and they're face-to-face at the 0 point? Yes, it does. And then, of course, Dana White or whoever puts his arm in between thinking that's going to do anything. But the energy leaps up at the 0 point. And even we can feel it if we've been at a restaurant or a bar and you feel someone looking at you for very long. Do I know that guy? Who is it? What is it? This guy causing trouble. What's his problem? We start to, and if we can sense it as humans with our wonderful spoken language and all the words and wonderful William Shakespeare's throughout all human time, dogs who have a wonderful language as well, but don't need as many letters, so it's a faster language, can sense it within seconds, moments.
And they also sense when we're getting anxious too in those moments. And so it's also a reminder of, I've got to really check myself before I even go into that situation, right? Because if I bring in that anxiety of the red light that I just hit, or the person who cut me off, or that I'm running 10 minutes late, if I bring that energy in, and then I shouldn't be surprised when that dog or cat even is giving that back to me.
Yeah, exactly. Because many of them don't have. A lot of them don't have that mature skill in the world of their own self-control and energy.
Yeah.
And that's what we're looking for. Of course, as a father, that's what I want for my 4 kids. I want that for myself, right? Self-control, especially nowadays, right? It's hard. There's entertainment hitting us. There's advertisements. There's food stuff. There's self-control is very valuable throughout all of history. And it's necessary in dogs. Now, of course, in the wild canine, you just get killed by nature if you lack self-control. Right. So nature will kick your butt until you learn it. And it might be a lethal butt kicking. But for us, we want to always check ourselves before walking in, relax. And of course, unlike what I'm doing now, which is a lot of talking, when I'm with the more nervous, anxious, reactive, aggressive, whatever a case I'm dealing with, the more quiet I get. Now, not quiet and too still, but quiet and smooth with the movement. Because I want to show, like you were saying, you want to show yourself to be in control and relaxed, but you also want to, of course, have to hope the dog starts mirroring that.
Yeah, and that movement too is also important when we're meeting these dogs or just interacting with them, because especially for us, when we do timed visits, it can be really tempting to rush through that visit because we've got to hit our 30 minutes or our hour-long visit or however we're there, which means that we tend to be moving faster, more rapidly,
yes,
more erratically in that home and space, because we're just trying to get something done. I'm just trying to pick up the bowl and run over to the sink to scrub it out and then put it back down and go over and scoop out the litter. Like, that's what I'm doing. But what the dog is seeing is this erratic, fast-moving, unpredictable movement of somebody.
Yeah, and some dogs would say, "Well, now do I nip at your feet?" Right?
Yeah,
You're in the house of the blue heeler or whatever. Yeah. And for that, I say, "Hey, listen." I turn around and I actually start to with those kind of things. Just to address this one issue, if it's not a real serious bite case, you can whip around and almost like I mirror the dog back on itself a little bit with my 2 hands, almost like I have mouths. Now, I don't even touch the dog usually in this case, but I'm almost like shuffling and herding and cutting it off spatially a little bit, just to say, listen, don't come after my feet. I'm claiming my space. I'm claiming you. So in a way, you do want to go in, claim the environment smooth as possible. Yeah. And that way, if you do raise the energy some or start moving a little quicker, the dog already knows, oh yeah, we have to start the relationship with respect, and then we can grow trust. But a lot of times, we have to be careful because some people will try to bribe their way in or go with trust only. And the dog is saying, yeah, I'll eat this treat for you. I'll receive a pet or two, but I do not respect you. And that's where the being really skilled or learning to be more skilled with the touch, space, movement, energy can come into play.
Now, how do those 4 pillars align with the 5 senses of the dogs that you mentioned earlier?
Yeah. So the 5 senses, right? Touch, smell, taste, vision, and hearing are interesting because dogs, as we know, are born blind and deaf. So those are what I call the secondary senses. The primary senses of touch, smell, and taste are what we want to kind of look at deeper. Because if you go into a house and the dog did not sniff touch you, and notice there is a touch, right? It's not just a sniff usually. Now, the worst cases, of course, are the most difficult. Let's say that they might sniff from afar away while they're cringing in the corner or in the crate or whatever, behind a couch or under a couch or something. But we ideally want to see the sniff touch because to me, that's similar to the evolution of the human handshake, where the 2 guys would come up, well met, and they grab the forearm or the wrist or whatever they do. They shake the hands and they say, even if we have weapons, we're not going to spear each other to death. Right? So it's a way to start a relationship through touch. And dogs, of course, start their life through touch with the mom and with each other. And then it just spreads. So there's always going to be a touch or a non-touch. And if it's a fearful case, they'll try to slip the touch, like Muhammad Ali, get away from the touch. And those guys, you might have to like lasso, kind of get the slip lead over the neck, and then gently but firmly give a little tug and then go loose, tug and go loose, tug it, always going loose, always going back to relaxation while you're kind of dragging them across the floor gently as possible, but still getting the job done. That's the tricky part of what a lot of us do. But it is made worse through our talking, usually. In most cases, that's one thing for sure. Because if I'm a nervous dog and I'm in those states of mind and you talk to me, even friendly, I might take the nervousness as praise in many cases. Once in a while, you'll get an exception. There's always exceptions. Once in a while, you say, and the dog comes forward and wags a little bit and is getting better through a little bit of friendly talking in a relaxed way. But usually, it is the talking can get us into trouble instead of just using the touch, the space, the movement, and the energy. For people, I always ask that, well, are you calmer when you're quiet? Or are you calmer when you're blabbing all the time? And we know the answer, right? We're calmer when we're breathing and quiet and smooth with it.
Yeah, and that's a battle against our primary way of communication, isn't it?
Exactly.
Of going, well, I've got to talk because that's how I communicate, right? But recognizing there are so many other senses that we have to engage, and that if we aren't, there's going to be a lot of stuff that it's basically going to be a dropped call, right? Because we think we're sending one thing,
that's right,
but we're actually saying something else.
So, yeah, going back to that nervous or terrified, anxious dog, I've got him on the leash now, right? I slip the slip lead over. Now I bring him over to my left leg and I don't do anything, but I put his nose, if I can, within an inch or two. And then I'm hoping that the rest nature kind of does the rest, right? I'm trying to get his nose to do the sniff touch as gentle as possible while still getting the job done. And usually at that point, and I had a client yesterday, this dog was terrified, used to peeing everywhere, and it was a rescue, right, for the people. So we don't know the whole history. But I always tell people, and this is a good one to spread, let it go. Let the past go, of course. Live in the moment. The dog was using habits he felt worked from the past. So, but we were in the present saying, that's not working anymore. So it's a good challenge. Just like all of us need a challenge once in a while for personal growth, and there's no growth inside the comfort zone, all that stuff, right? But I got his nose closer, so he did do the sniff touch, and then they were amazed because he didn't leave when I backed off. So I'll always take a little and give a little, take a little then give a little, take a little and give a little. This way you're being kind of a gentleman or a lady in dog language.
Going, was that okay? Was that okay? Was that it's basically this ask of going, okay, if we do this, how does the dog respond? Ooh, doesn't look like they like that. Okay, I'm going to back off. We're going to engage in a different way. Oh, we're going to engage because otherwise, because what you're kind of cutting around each one of those little things. So we don't know the dog's history. We don't know their past experiences in a lot of cases. Even the owners might not. So we're coming in and going, this is part of my assessment of getting to know who you are.
Yes, especially in the beginning, right? In the beginning, I want to be super calm, somewhat authoritative in it, as far as that sounds weird. It sounds negative as I came out of my mouth there. Not that way, in a dog way, which is just like, I'll just take up space in a gentle way, but I'm taking up space. Because to me, right, there are alpha dogs, but they're called parents. Those are the parent dogs. By default, they're just in charge because the young ones are tiny and they don't know what they're doing, and they're following the leader. It's the same with my chickens out in our chicken yard, right? And it's the same in our household. If me and my wife really want to go out to eat somewhere, we often don't let the 6-year-old say, well, no, we're not doing that. We're doing this, right? That would be a little bit out of order according to nature's ways. Yeah. So anyway, we're calm, but we're fair, very fair. But we're also, like you said, we want to explore the touching and the spacing. And then we want to, if I see a weakness, it depends what you're doing, what line of work, right? In the pet, if you're just sitting with them, you might not need to push it as much as I have to. I have to then push a little bit and prod a little bit. If I see, like if we have a client, of course, that says that you can't touch the dog's butt, then of course I have to touch the dog's butt, right? So, but it's even that is done smooth with what I call touch and goes, which are 1 to 2 seconds, and I'm out before the dog even notices. And that's key, because if the dog notices and then says something like, get off me, in dog, then I can contribute to making the dog worse. Yeah. But if the dog doesn't even notice, it's like nice, done very smoothly, then soon I'm up to 3 and 4 seconds. Then soon I'm up to 5 and 6, 7, 8 seconds. And soon the dog doesn't care. The dog is turning wonderfully behaved.
Dealing with the death of a client's pet is never an easy situation, and we can often become confused or unsure about what we do about it and how we express that to our clients. Well, Pet Perennials make it easy to send a heartfelt condolence gift directly to someone with a broken heart. They have this awesome direct-to-consumer gift model that takes the effort off of us and ensures a thoughtful, personalized sympathy gift reaches our client or an employee on our behalf. All gift packages include a handwritten card, colorful gift wrap, and shipping fees across both the US and Canada. They also offer an array of milestone gifts and greeting cards that can be sent to celebrate birthdays, extend get well wishes, and welcome new and rescued pets. Additionally, there are gift choices in case you need to send a sympathy gift in memory of a special human client or celebrate a pregnancy, engagement, or wedding of a pet lover. If you're interested, register for a free Business Gift Perks account to unlock the all-inclusive discounted package prices. The service is used on an as-need basis, so there are no monthly or annual obligations or minimum purchases. Learn more at petperennials.com. Check out their business programs or register for that free gift perk account by using the link in the show notes. Well, because again, it's in this. I think you alluded to this earlier of allowing that dog to fail in a safe way, right? It's kind of like we're going to work through this, and especially I've heard people say before of, oh, my dog doesn't really know how to dog, right? And that means a lot of different things for a lot of different people. But I think for the context of each family, each person, each interaction, we have different expectations of what that actually means, and going, am I bringing in my biases for what's supposed to happen right now? How is this dog actually going to interact with me? And then importantly, at the end of the day, how do we work together, right? That's ultimately what we're trying to do. We're trying to accomplish a common goal here. It's going to take some time, but we have to know what we're dealing with.
Yeah, exactly. And it's to me, it's been fun discovering over the many years that they can change quicker than most people believe. They can. I want to encourage everyone, if anyone listens to this, to give yourself freedom to grow into it, and give the dog freedom to change. Because one thing we can definitely do with these creatures is maim them by keeping them the victim, right? We don't want to do that. We want to say, no, hey, listen, I call it Teddy Roosevelting the thing, the bully, and we're going to charge forward, and hey, we're running up the hill together, and we're having gusto a little bit. And even with the worst cases, they need a little bit of that, especially the worst cases, they need a little bit of that pushing, a little like tuning the guitar string. Without the proper pressure, there's no good tuning. But if we put too much pressure, we break the stinking string, right? But if we have no pressure, there's no music either. So we need that, finding the right tuning for each dog or each family or each household that you go into is, to me, that's part of the fun. Right. That keeps me motivated over the years, right? Mm-hmm. And then I go, sometimes we'll work the doorway. So I'm in the house, the dogs try to attack me or bark or do whatever the heck that we're working on at the front door. And then I say, okay, let's do the whole thing again. And I go out, pretend goodbye. I shake my keys and leave. I'm outside for a minute. And when I'm out there, I'm saying, this is an awesome job, man. This is so cool. We get to work we're helping families. We're helping people every day. And with their furry family members and all that. And a lot of times they don't even know the level of help we can do, which is really cool. Yeah. So anyway, just to encourage our fellow dog people and cat people out there and pet people, it doesn't matter if you're working with a iguana, you're doing a good job. Keep going.
For the smell part, Garrett, do you ever use any sort of calming sprays or fragrances or to try and avoid anything?
That's interesting you say that, because in the end of my second book, So Long Separation Anxiety, I do mention a single drop of lavender oil. Because once in a while, of course, that can, and that's a great one on the 4th of July, especially, right? Or New Year's, some places they light off the fireworks and all that. But as far as extraneous stuff, personally, I don't go too far into a lot of that, because I want to be as simple and gentle and direct and honest as possible, like a lot of the dogs are, while still, using some of the modern stuff, which is cool. But yeah, definitely a drop of lavender oil can do something. I don't know. Maybe I should develop a little cologne or perfume or something, right? We can go into business on that together. This will help calm it up. Or why do you smell like hemp?
Right. Well, I ask it because I know it's a big concern that a lot of us have, going from house to house to house to house to house, picking up a lot of smells throughout the day. But also, from what you're saying, Garrett, too, of going, well, it also has to be practical. It has to be workable. Anything you do has to be repeatable and sustainable. And that's where we fall down a lot of times. We may bend all the way over in one direction for one kind of client or for one kind of instance, but we aren't able to do that the next time because they don't have barriers, or they have a weird way of getting inside the house, or they've got, XYZ going on. There's a lot of stuff outside of our control. So really focusing on, what do I have control over? How can I repeatedly show up as myself? Because that consistency is also huge in this entire process of, if I show up, it's hard to build a relationship if I show up one day speaking Klingon, and then the next day show up speaking Mandarin, and the next day show up speaking right. Spanish. Like, nobody's going to know what's going on. So we have to have that consistency of, Garrett's here. Oh, Colin's here. I know what to expect from them.
Yeah. And I think that's where, for me, that's why I broke it down in those 4 pillars. Because I'm like, if I'm aware of touch, who's touching who, how, and when, how is the touch transpiring? Is this a good touch, or is he pushing it into rudeness? Oh, did he slip my touch? That means I got to work on some touch and goes. And then the space. Is this dog circling nonstop? Would mother dog allow that? Or is that dog whirling himself up into becoming obsessive? We need to interrupt that a little bit. And that can look like you're just playing defensive basketball. You go over, stop them for 2 seconds. Then you turn and give freedom again. But yeah, keeping it consistent. And that's awesome. And I love working with dogs too, because of course they're going to tell you exactly how they're feeling. And it's up to us to read it. And as we read it and feel it and see it and sometimes smell it, right? If you got some nervous one with the anal glands, that's nasty, as we know, the oily kind of crappy smell. But that's an extra service you charge there, of course, because you said, hey, listen, I expressed the anal glands for you. So that, no, I'm just kidding.
you know, some people, but that, well, and that's, we have to remember that this is also in the context of talking with another human, right? The owner, right? The fur parent going, at the end of the day, like, I have to talk to them about what's going on. So when you're having these conversations, Garrett, with people's pets, when you're doing this assessment or when you're working on them through a training program or they're doing boarding with you, how do you talk to them? What kind of language do you use? Because I know things come up, and you deal a lot in the world of, reactivity, defensiveness, anxiousness. How do you make sure that you're using those in an appropriate manner so that the client understands at the end of the day what's happening?
Right. Well, for my personality, I kind of go back and forth. I can hit him with something real serious, then throw some stupid joke in, some dad joke. But to answer more directly, we have to be honest. That's a huge thing, especially in the industry. We get some clients that have been burned before by some other places, and I don't like that, of course. So we're always trying to be right up front and very honest with everyone. If we say, for example, have a dog that might not be the best fit for our kennel, and we try our darndest, first we call them and say, hey, can we get your dog on the treadmill? Because he's starting to bite the fencing and freak out too much, or he's barking too much, or whatever, even after we've gone in a few times and kind of tried to calm him down and spatially and everything. And usually that will help. But if that still doesn't help and we think the dog might injure himself, the dog is freaking out, or, then of course we have to have a more serious conversation. And for us, we say with the kennel, like, it might not be the best fit for us, with me and your dog, or for us and your dog. We're sorry about this, but and I don't know if some people have others that they can recommend. That might be a good thing to do. But that's kind of how that goes with the kennel. And we're saying, listen, let's try again. Maybe usually we have a few things, a little bit of protocol where we'll try again, but for little bit shorter stays, kind of get your dog used to it a little bit. Or half the kennel dogs are not training clients, half are, right? Mm-hmm. So then, of course, we can suggest training, but through our calm training. But if we're talking defensive, you can use the word defensive, a little bit skittish, and say we definitely need something, maybe some trainer or behaviors to come in and start desensitizing the oversensitivity, a little bit of exposure therapy. With a reactive dog, of course, we have a reactive dog package of 8 private sessions or whatever, or we have board and train options and all. But even with the board and train options, I'm always warning everyone, results can fade over time because of the relational side of things. And I say you have to be wary if you're going to put your dog with anyone when you're not there. Mm-hmm. So you have to really care for the thing. Anyway, the conversation must be fairly direct, and people aren't going to always enjoy hearing that. And over the years, of course, you might get someone that blows up at you or whatever. That's where we think again, this is such a great job. What an amazing thing we can do. No, that's always just for positive thinking, and go exercise yourself after that.
Got your post-it note on your desk. You actually like this job, right?
That's right. Yes, that's right. You wanted to do this.
You said yes, right? Right. But that's a good point, Garrett, of just the being honest with people at the end of the day. We might not always be able to use the right words or remember the exact phrase or whatever, but coming at it from a position of honesty and of a genuine nature to help and make sure that they're getting the best help possible. And that takes us being honest with ourselves too, of like, I went into a meet and greet the other day, and this dog was definitely using space and touch in a very high energy amount where we couldn't dissipate it. No matter what we did, or how I moved in this environment, this dog was not allowing that. It was really starting to then herd me into a corner. And it was like, look, you need to leave in 2 days, and this is not in a good place right now. This is not a good position for us to be in, and is not going to set your dog up or us up for success with where we are now. Now, if you want to work on this when you get back from this trip, we'd love to do that, set up some more trial days and some more short-term things. But you calling us today and leaving in 2 days to be gone for 7, right, being gone for a whole week, that nobody's going to be happy with the end results of that. And just letting them know this is beyond what we're comfortable with.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and if we don't have the boundaries with the humans, then it's not going to go well either, right? We talked a lot about boundaries with the dogs through the boundaries of touch and space and movement and energy, but yeah, exactly. We have to have the boundaries with the humans, otherwise they can become worse than the animals.
Well, we've got to work with them. Like if this is a long-term relationship that we're trying to build here, we need to be their partner. They need to be an ally in this entire process of working with the dog and setting them up for success. And if we're fighting them on things, if we can't be honest with them, that nothing is going to progress.
Exactly. Yeah. That's so good. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. Yeah. Oh, I mean, of course, doing this for 2 decades, there's always going to be once in a while a problem client or something, right? That's going to come up, especially the more that you can help and serve over the years. And we've had times where we got me and another trainer going, or my apprentice trainer going, and so we're doing double sessions out front, and then people are picking up and dropping off the kennels, so it can get crazy. We're licensed actually to 100 dogs in the kennel, but we refuse to go over 30, and even that usually is we try to max out at 25, because even though we have a great team, I'm not downing you guys. No, we have a great team, and we definitely train them up in the way they should do the stuff, and the dogs are have great clients. For so many, basically, I guess I'm putting it this way: there's only so much energy allowed in any environment. Mm-hmm. Whether that's, and I liken that to, okay, this much weight in the elevator, or this many people allowed in this banqueting hall for fire code, or whatever it is. So we also have to be aware of our own personal energy, because some of us can take on more than others. And there's nothing, I'm not saying that's a good or a bad thing. I'm just saying it is what it is. We all have different skills, and that way we can kind of maybe engineer some of those boundaries according to our strengths and weaknesses.
And knowing I have agency to stop at any moment and reset. Right. I've worked with a lot of our employees of going, hey, if you're in a home and if things start to spiral out of your control, you can step into the garage for a little bit and reset yourself before re-engaging with that. Then that's actually what you need to remove yourself from that. And if you're not okay with how things are going, stop trying to engage and take a moment to collect yourself and reassess the situation before continuing. And that having that self-awareness to go, there's, like you said, Garrett, there's too much energy in this room right now, and I'm contributing to that because I'm frantically trying to move around and get vacuuming and pick up the mess and also get the doors closed. I need to really check myself right now, because I'm not helping. I'm not helping the situation. The problem's me.
Yeah. And remember, the animals are looking to feed off the energy. Like what are they going to mirror? So we have to be, we have to become skilled, and like you said, taking those breaks. There's a good quote, I think it's by Viktor Frankl: between stimulus and response, there is a space. I love that. I love that quote. So I keep that and use that mentally for me and emotionally. And the beautiful thing with dogs, of course, is you'll see that too. We want to encourage the reactive dog or the aggressive dog or the anxious dog or fearful dog to find that space. Then they can yawn it off. Then they can stretch it off. Then they can perform a calming signal. Then they can do the big shake off and then start sniffing again or blinking their eyes or whatever the calming signal is. But we have to get to that little space sometimes. And it's a wonderful, safe place to be, which is good.
Garrett, I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to talk with us and encourage us to find that space, not just in our own lives, but in the dogs' lives, and giving them permission to do that and working with them at the senses and those pillars that you've talked about. I know there's a whole lot more here, right? And there's so many different scenarios and things that we could go down. But for people who are interested in picking your brain on things or following along or looking forward to that book that you've got coming out, how best can people do that?
Yeah. Well, we have gstevensdogtrainer.com. It's Stevens with a V. That's one website. We also have stevensfamilykennels.com. And then Stevens Family Kennels is on Instagram as well. That's where I think we first connected. Mm-hmm. And thank you so much for having me on. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. And Garrett, I'll have those links in the show notes so we can click right to those and people can get connected. And Garrett, absolutely pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks a lot, Colin.
Since my conversation with Garrett, I haven't stopped thinking about the quote where he said, between a stimulus and a response, there is a space. There is. And there's what we do in that space that can make all the difference. There's what we can do. There's what we don't do. There's what we ought to do. And it's all in understanding the dog that we are working with, that is before us, and the goals that we have for that visit. It's also important in running our business, in that between the stimulus, between when we receive something and when we need to act, there is a gap. And we can process. We can take a breath. We can choose a different way of responding. So whether we're working with a dog or a client or a business decision, embrace that space and allow yourself to make the most of it. We want to thank today's sponsors, Time to Pet and Pet Perennials, for making today's show possible. And we really want to thank you for listening. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your week, and we'll be back again soon.